Hey everybody, if you're watching this video, you're probably just starting out on guitar, or maybe you've been playing a little bit and you're into punk rock, but you're stuck in kind of the same patterns. There's a lot of misconceptions about punk rock guitar playing. A lot of people think it's easy or it's just all power chords, but with such a wide variety of bands that fall under the category of punk rock, there's an even wider variety of playing styles and techniques. In this video, I'm going to go over 5 common mistakes that beginner or intermediate punk rock guitar players make and show you how to correct them so you can progress forward, so you can start playing a lot cooler riffs and melodies. But before we begin, remember to like and subscribe. That way you get notified when I post new content. I post new videos like this several times a week. And check out my website, scottobryanguitar.com. I have the tab for hundreds of punk rock and grunge songs up there. And so now with all that stuff out of the way, here we go. Alright, so the first misconception or problem with a lot of punk guitarists is that you're only using power chords. And while it's true that there's a lot of bands that use just power chords pretty much exclusively, like the hardcore bands, most punk bands, especially the original ones, are actually using full bar chords. And a good example of that is the Ramones. So if we take a riff like Blitzkrieg Bop, Johnny Ramone's practically playing that full A major bar chord. So for the lion's share of what he's playing all 6 strings. And then when he switches to the D, he's not just playing like a 2-note or 3-note power chord. He's going to be also playing that B string as well. Same thing when he goes up to the D. And the result is a much fuller sound. So let's compare that to how a lot of people play that song with a 2-note or 3-note power chord. So that's the 2-note version, and now the 3-note version. You can probably already hear that the first version is a lot fuller sounding and brighter. And the result had a drastic effect on the Ramones' style and tone. So if you're in a band and you're writing songs, or if you're trying to learn some of your favorite riffs, try it with the major bar chord as opposed to just sitting with a power chord. There's a lot of times where the power chord's actually with what the song calls for and it's actually what they're playing. But there's other times there's subtle differences between playing a major bar chord and just playing a 2-note or 3-note power chord that you can hear on the record and you can incorporate into your playing. The next misconception or issue you may be having with your punk style guitar playing is that you feel that you need to play a bar chord or a power chord in all your rhythms. While power chords and bar chords can make everything feel very thick and give you a very aggressive tone, there's a ton of bands that actually use single note or double note riffs in their rhythm guitar playing. A great example of this is Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers' one-track Mind. So the song starts off like this. So the song actually starts off with these 2-note power chords moving up the neck. But instead of getting stuck in a pattern of just repeating those power chords again, or adding some strumming to it, it's actually pretty boring. What they do is they actually add some individual notes along the progression of the chords. So we start off with a C here. And what they're going to do is they're going to play notes along the C major scale over that C chord. So we have the C here rooted at the 3rd fret of the A string. And we're going to start our C major scale. So over the C chord, they play this little melody based off of the C major scale. Then we go to the D, and they do the same thing. Then the next chord. And then the last chord is just a continuation. So this is a good example of how you can mix things up with your rhythm playing so that you don't get stuck in that boring just... And you can add some interest and a melody to the song. And you don't have to use the major scale, you can use a minor scale if you want something with a little harsher attack, or you have a song in a minor key. And what that might sound like under a different, maybe minor chord progression is something like this. So remember, think a little bit outside the box when you're coming up with your rhythms. Don't get stuck in the power chord or bar chord box. Try to add some interest with maybe some single note lines. Another problem with your punk rock playing is that you're going balls out the entire time. And while punk is an aggressive music and you want to have that sense of urgency and you want that guitar to be just loud and in your face, what happens is over time, and even a short period of time, is the audience gets desensitized to the overall brashness of the sound, and it stops feeling aggressive or urgent if you just continually blast it at them. So the way to avoid this trap is to use dynamics to create a higher impact when you do go balls out. So a good example of this is Fear's I Don't Care About You. So the chorus is like a big, almost anthemic chorus, and it goes like this. But when it gets to the verse, they're going to do this kind of mellow palm muted part to kind of cool things off so they can really hit it hard when they go to the chorus. So it sounds like this. So going to that kind of quieter palm muted part and then hitting that chorus hard with big loud chords is going to increase that impact, and it's also going to make your audience feel that chorus is much bigger than it was if you had played the verse at the same level. And another band that uses dynamics really well is Nirvana. Just listen to Smells Like Teen Spirit. Pre-chorus is basically just... and then it hits that chorus really hard. So really work on that with your playing. Try to figure out where your quiet spots are and where your loud spots can be so that you can really increase that impact of your loud spots. Another misconception or mistake you're making is that you're in a punk band and you're like, punk bands don't play guitar solo. And while it's true, punk was a reaction to the big overbloated scene of the 70s. A lot of the greatest punk bands played guitar solos. Bad Brains, Dead Kennedys, The Clash, they all played some type of guitar solo in their music. It doesn't have to be some big Eddie Van Halen style guitar solo. In fact, it probably shouldn't be if you're playing punk rock guitar. But there's a lot of options for you to add some interest in your music in the form of a guitar solo without it having to be super technical or out of your skill set. The first one is the Chuck Berry style bend that Johnny Thunders used in practically every Heartbreakers song. So in the simplest form, without even knowing the key of the song, we can play a Chuck Berry bend over each chord. So let's say we have a chord progression that goes like this. So we've got an F sharp chord rooted at the 2nd fret. We've got a G chord, and we've got an A chord. And you don't even really need to know this, but we can play Chuck Berry style bends over the top of this and it sounds cool. So all we're doing here is we have this chord rooted on the 2nd fret of the low E string. So we can play a Chuck Berry style bend at the 2nd fret of the B and E by bridging our index finger across the B and E at the 2nd fret and bending at the 4th fret with our ring finger. And then when the chord progression moves up to the next chord, the G, can do the same thing. So the G's root is at the 3rd fret of the low E, so we play at the 3rd fret of the high E and B. And then when it moves up to the A, that's the 5th fret of the low E string. We can do the same thing at the 5th fret of the B and E. So at the bare minimum, if we don't even know the key of the song, you can just duplicate along the fretboard. And if we have a chord that's rooted at the A string, like this C, 3rd fret of the A string's a C, we can just go 5 frets up on the E and B string. So if we play 3rd fret A string, we can go 8th fret B and E. That's also a C. So if we have, we can go. But also if you want something even simpler than that, take a song like Screeching Weasel's My Right. It's got this very cool, very simple melodic lead that's played at the beginning of the song, and the song wouldn't be the same without it, but it's super easy. So we're just playing a 5th to 7th fret hammer-on. The song is in the key of B, so 7th fret, and so that's why we're hammering on the high E from the 5th to the 7th fret. This is a B as well. So we're just going into that. And then it just does this kind of ascending pattern. So if you know scales, this is basically the B harmonic minor scale, but you don't even need to know that to do that. You just could find your B chord, start your first note at the B, on the high E string, and then you can just figure out what sounds cool. Oh, that 8th fret doesn't sound good, right? So we just skip that one. So there's a ton of options to add some interest to your song through solos without having to know a bunch of technical knowledge that fit really well in punk style playing. So the last mistake you're probably making is a very common one, and it's using too much distortion. So don't get me wrong, distortion is a great thing, and it has its place of being really thick sometimes. I'm all for heavily distorted guitars that are somewhat discordant and really abrasive, but just know that the more distortion you use, the less distinction you're gonna have in your notes. So if we take a riff with the distortion level that I have right now on my Rat pedal, I have the distortion level at like a 3 out of 10 maybe. Here's what it sounds like. Now if we turn the distortion all the way up, you can hear that it loses its distinction. So you can hear the chord changes, but you don't hear the individual strums as well. And don't get me wrong, in a lot of applications that can be really cool. I have a lot of songs that I've written with a really heavy distortion. I felt it really fit the song. But just make sure you're intentional with how much distortion you want on a song, especially when you're playing live or recording. When you're playing live, everything's just gonna get muddier, unless you're playing in a venue with like a state-of-the-art sound system, and most of us aren't. And if you have a second guitar player, it's even gonna get worse. And also along the lines of recording, a lot of bands will overdub, and it's the same situation kind of applies. When you add layers of guitars, they lose their distinction anyways, and then if you have a heavily distorted guitar, it's just gonna sound like mud in the mix. And you'll also probably notice the distortion level that you hear when you're playing with your amp in a room is gonna sound way more distorted when you're recording. So typically when I'm recording, if I'm using a distortion pedal, I'll find that kind of level that I like in my room, and then I'll just dial it back a little bit. A good rule of thumb is to find the level of distortion that you think you need, and always dial it back like 1 degree. So that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, there's no right or wrong way to play guitar. These are just basic guidelines and some common mistakes I see people making. But in the end, it's up to you and what your personal tastes are. So just experiment and have fun with it. Also remember to like and subscribe. It helps me keep this channel going. And check out my website, scottobryanguitar.com. I have the tab for hundreds of punk, rock, and grunge songs up there, as well as my beginner guitar course that's on sale for a limited time. There's 10 videos taking you from scratch all the way up to rock and roll proficiency. They're super easy to follow, and there's some fun songs to play along the way. And I'll see you guys next time.